gives us the word Priscilla. And they were very close friends, probably the best friends that Paul had. Then we talked about Mary and Andronicus, Ampliatus, Urbanus, Stachys, Apelles, and those who met, who were meeting in a part of the household of Aristobulus. Herodian, who was some of your translations say my kinsman, that just means they're Jewish. And those in the household of Narcissus, who were in the Lord. And that's where we left off. In verse 12, greet Tryphena and Tryphosa, those women worked hard, or who work hard in the Lord. And then also greet my friend Persis, another woman who has worked very hard in the Lord. So we have three women that are mentioned here in verse 12. Tryphena and Tryphosa. And if you're just reading that, what would strike you about those names? And so what would you derive from that? Tryphena and Tryphosa. They're sisters, perhaps twins. Both names are based on a Greek noun that means soft or delicate. And so if we were naming them in English, we would name them Delicate and Dainty. Those would be my twin girls, Delicate and Dainty. And so thinking about the names and thinking about what they mean there and the fact that they may or may not have been twins, what's ironic about what he says about them here? All right, I don't know if was that going out on Facebook. Is there anybody on Facebook that on Zoom?
Yeah.
So Tryphena and Tryphosa were perhaps twins. The word for their names means delicate or soft, and yet we're told that they worked exceedingly hard and exhaustive. So the next person is my dear friend Persis. At least it's what it says in the New International Version. Somebody want to read how it's described? Give me a different translation of that second person here. Just read the description of them. Okay, Mike. What translation?
Persis the beloved.
And what translation?
New American Standard.
New American Standard. Persis the beloved. Anybody else have something different?
The beloved Persis.
The beloved person. Okay. So. I think that's important. The NIV has my beloved.
so it's just a suggestion versus wasn't one that was men and women at different times?
No, not this one. Not that I know of. We had one last week that was. This is female. Yes. I pushed it, I turned it on. It's not my fault the batteries weren't working. So, she's another woman who has worked hard for the Lord. But in this case, that verb is past tense. So she's not working hard, she has worked. She did it in the past. And again, the same word, which was fatigued, would be the way that we would translate that. She was fatigued in the Lord. So that tells me a couple of things, perhaps about her. Either I doubt that she's deceased because they're greeting her, but she may be disabled, or she may be elderly and not able to work hard like she did before. But she still deserves to be greeted and appreciated for her work. So we have these three women here, Tryphena, Tryphosa, and Persis. Did I say that her name indicates that she might be from Persia? Did I say that? Oh, good. I didn't leave that off.
Dan,
Yes.
my NIV says that Tryphena and Tryphosa worked hard, but she worked very hard.
Okay. I think the Greek word is the same.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll look at that though. Okay, now verse 13, we come to, again, in the whole list of names, verse 13 is one of the most intriguing, and we have some idea perhaps of who that is. It's almost on the level of Priscilla and Aquila, or Prisca and Aquila. And so verse 13 says, greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother, who has been a mother to me also. And so they're related to each other. I think that this woman is Rufus' actual mother, but she has, I don't think that we're to indicate from this that she's actually Paul's mother. So somebody turn over to Mark 15 and verse 21. Gospel of Mark, verse 15 and verse 21. Are you having Fitbit on? Because you're getting lots of steps.
I don't need.
Who has Mark 15:21? Okay, Nathan?
And they compelled a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his cross.
Okay. So here's Simon of Cyrene, and he's identified further as the father of Alexander and Rufus. Who was the Gospel of Mark written to? What was the audience? A Roman audience. And more than likely, Peter is the one who's the actual source of the information for this, and writing through Peter. And one of the reasons you think that is because Peter is not treated kindly in Mark, and you can just see Peter wanting to pay his dues for his foibles. And so he's just laying it out there, not trying to hide anything. And so, otherwise, why in Mark is Simon of Cyrene identified even further than just this disciple that's coming in from on his pilgrimage there, but that he's the father of Alexander and Rufus. So it seems, don't know for sure, but it seems that this Rufus is the Rufus in that Romans 16 is the same Rufus that we read about in the Gospel of Mark. Rufus may be a different person. Rufus is not an uncommon name in Roman inscriptions, and that would be books and tax records and all of those kinds of things during this time. The name Rufus appears 347 times, so it's not an uncommon name. But it says that he is chosen in the Lord. And that could just be a general commendation of him, and all of us are that. We're all chosen because we are Christians, and we have qualified ourselves to be in that group of people that God had determined beforehand that would be saved, which is those who believe in God, believe in Christ, and by faith and grace and all of that. But in this list, it seems that Paul is pointing out extraordinary things of commendation that are specific to the person. And so he was in some way chosen in the Lord for a specific work. And maybe it's, whatever it is here in Rome, he's a distinguished servant of the Lord. I think it's intriguing that this Rufus would be the son of Simon who bore the cross of Jesus for him. And it makes sense to me because of Mark and who Mark is writing to, which is Christians in Rome. Paul also mentions that this woman, we don't have her name, who's the mother of Rufus and mine too, I'm sure that's not intended to be literal, that she was literally Paul's mother, but rather that she treated him in a motherly way. And I don't know where that would have happened because I know Paul hasn't been to Rome. So that would have been somewhere else, and now they're all in Rome.
Yeah.
Yes?
Could it have been that Rufus was somebody sent, with some other apostle or something on a missionary journey?
Yeah.
So in that sense was
Right.
chosen.
Or a church sent him.
Right, but his mother and his dad, Simon of Cyrene, were back some area where Paul had met them.
Right. Yes, and that also intrigues us. Okay, so was Simon converted as a result of carrying the cross and seeing it and coming to faith in Jesus at some point, and all of his family as well? Again, we can't know that, but it is intriguing. Any comments on that? Verse 14. Greet Asyncritus, Phlegon, Hermes, Patrobas, Hermas, and the other brothers and sisters with them. So here's 5 men and the brethren with them. My translation says brothers and sisters. The Greek word just says brethren, but it's meant generically. It would include male and female. We know nothing about these people. This is the only place that, as far as we know, that they're mentioned. Paul sends greetings to them without comment at all here. He may not have known them personally. He may have known them only by reputation. He may have known them because of the fact that there was apparently a group of Christians that were meeting with them in their house. Again, that's one of the points I think that we can take from this, is that whether you are a standout person or a leader or what have you, God knows you. And he knows your name. And he knows what you're doing. And these people, God has honored by giving us their names, even though we don't know anything about them. Any comments on that? Yes?
Hermes is the name of one of their gods.
Yes?
And I think it would be interesting to be, most likely he was dedicated to that god as a child. That was a common practice.
Right?
And it would be interesting to convert and still carry that name on.
Right?
I liken it today of someone being named Muhammad,
Right?
who then converts to Christianity.
Right?
That
Right.
would just be a really interesting way to live, kind of with this dual
Right.
feeling.
Right. And it would, if you introduce yourself as Muhammad and they would say, "Oh, are you Islamic?" You say, "No, I'm a Christian."
Yeah.
Really? There's a door that opens for you. Apollos was named after. I mean, there's plenty of Greek and Roman gods that people named their children. And in fact, as we're going to see here in a moment, we have then verse 15 says another group, and this is perhaps a family Greet Philologus, Julia, Nereus, and his sister, and Olympus, and all the Lord's people who are with them. I would think that this is probably a family that's being talked about here. Can you tell me, just from the name and your outstanding knowledge of Greek, what Philologos or logos means?
Word lover?
Yes, lover of words, fond of words. And so I put in my notes, maybe he's a preacher. You know, I have no idea, but I like that. Julia is perhaps his wife. And in all of the Roman inscriptions that we have from this period of time, Julia is the most common name found. It's found 1,400 times in inscriptions. I was trying to think of what's the most popular baby girl's name. Warringtons, you all looked at baby names. What's the most common baby name, or did you just come up with one? You just came up with one. Kate, did you do the same thing when you made May, or did you look at lists?
I looked at lists.
And what was the number one name? Do you remember?
The number one names nowadays are weird.
Yeah, go ahead and give me it.
Well, they're all like androgynous names.
Okay. Yes.
I have one list: Olivia, Amelia, Sophia, Emma, and 96 more rows.
Okay. So Olivia, let's just take Olivia, which is what the Rambalas named their baby. They're not here, so don't be looking at them. And don't tease them about the fact, oh, you went with the crowd. So Julia would have been on the list as the number one name, probably at some point in time. Daniel was always in the top 10 all my whole life until like last year, and my name dropped out of favor somehow. But I've had a good run, so I'm happy with that. Getting back to Nathan's comment, Hermes is the second most common name in the Roman Empire at that time, and it was found 640 times in the inscriptions. So if we have Philologos and Julia, that might indicate that Nereus is their son. And his sister, who is unnamed. And Olympus, who he doesn't say who she is. I mean, could be Julia's sister or one of their mothers that are living with them in the family. There was a church that also met with them in their house, and so their house would be an indication that they are all related. So listen, so far we've seen several small congregations that are meeting in homes that are all a part of the church in Rome. And I don't know how that worked out. I don't know how they did that. I don't know if at certain times that they all met together or not. I have no idea. But again, there were these and if it was a large church, they wouldn't have. It would be hard for them to find a meeting place for them to all meet together. So, any questions or comments on all of these names here? We've covered them all now. Okay. So, question 4: how are they to greet each other? From verse 16. Yes, greet one another with a holy kiss. We might say with a chaste kiss. A kiss that was given in fondness, was given in affection and respect, but there's nothing romantic about it. Okay? There's nothing about that. I remember when we were in Europe, when we were in Turkey and Greece, when Mike and I were down in Jerusalem and Israel, that custom in the Mediterranean area of greeting one another with a kiss was still very common. Just a kiss on each cheek, and not even necessarily that your lips touch, you're just on both sides, but like that. And I asked Liz when she came back from Italy, I said, were you greeted that way? And she said, yes, too much. Because this is not a part of our culture. It's not a part of American culture anyway. So let's look at a couple of passages here. Luke 7:45, Luke 22. Somebody turn to Luke 7, someone turn to Luke 22, someone turn to Acts 20. Who has 7:45? Luke 7:45. Nobody wants to get the first one. Yes, Mike?
You gave me no kiss, but she, since the time I came in, has not ceased to kiss my feet.
Okay, so when Jesus entered into the Pharisee's house there, Jesus noticed, I got no kiss, which would have shown affection, respect, honor, and whatever. He said, I didn't get one from you. Luke 22 and verse 47. You're probably knowing what this one is.
But Jesus said to him, Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss?
Okay, so here comes Judas with this kiss that's supposed to show fondness and respect and honor, and uses that means of betraying Jesus. And then Acts 20 and verse 37.
Then they all wept freely and fell on Paul's neck and kissed him.
Okay? And so in that case, it was a greeting goodbye. So it's something common in Europe, something common in the Mediterranean area, and it was something common in Judaism from all of those last three passages. So if it's common, why do you think Paul is telling them to do that here, if that's the normal, customary greeting? You say, I didn't come here to take a test this morning, Danny. I came here just to hear the answers. Pardon me?
If I send a letter to, somebody, I might say hello to everybody. It's not because I think they won't say hello to each other, but it's just say hello
Okay.
for me.
So you're saying that it would be, if I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly, that give everybody a kiss for me or a hug for me, or, yeah. I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting. Anybody else have an idea? Again, as we talked about the fact this is not something that had anything romantic about it. Hence the added word here, a holy kiss. And it may have been that some were reluctant to greet each other with a kiss. It might arouse suspicions in non-Christians, perhaps erotic feelings in others, and in fact, if you look historically, that did happen later on. There was evidence of that later on, of it being used as a means to move along a romantic relationship. So here, and I came across this, and I loved it, and so don't think that it's original with me. Paul is not teaching a new custom here. He's purifying an old one. So he's making sure that the custom of greeting one another with a kiss is maintained in its pure form, that it is a sign of affection and relationship in Christ. There are 4 epistles where Paul suggests this or tells us to do this here in Romans. Let's just go ahead and flip over to them real quick. 1 Corinthians chapter 16 and verse 20, which you can imagine with the idolatry and the fornication that was pretty rampant in Corinth, why it might be necessary there. And all the brothers and sisters here send you greetings. Greet one another with a holy kiss. 2 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 12 says, greet one another with a holy kiss. And 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 26, greet all God's people with a holy kiss. And those are the only times that he uses it, but it's used in all 4 of those epistles. Some people think that this was a part of their public worship. I don't think that. I think it would be the cultural equivalent, especially like in Judea, of foot washing. Is how you would greet somebody that's come into your home and welcome them and show show the proper respect and affection for them. And so culturally in one, they washed your feet. Culturally in another, they kissed you on your cheek. That doesn't mean that we need to do those things today. Neither one today. I mean, if somebody comes into your house and their feet are dirty and you're planning to have a lie-down dinner, you might want to think about doing that. But I think the point here is make sure that what you're communicating with each other is that we're brethren, that we are in fellowship with each other. And generally, what do we do to do that today, to show that today?
Hold handshake.
A handshake, a hug. Have you ever had somebody refuse to shake your hand? Or turn away from you rather than have you shake their hand or refuse a hug? It's the same thing if you refuse to kiss somebody there. It's important. Listen, if somebody refuses to shake my hand, what am I thinking?
Something's wrong.
Yeah, you got a problem with me. And we need to fix this, especially if we're brothers. So it's a sign of brotherhood. It's a sign of being a part of an accepted part, an honored part of a spiritual family. And again, Paul adds that at the end of that verse, all the churches of Christ salute you. And I think I went too far here. This is one of the first verses I memorized when I was younger. And why would I have memorized it? Oh, thank you. If I'm looking to memorize a verse that's short, I'm going with Jesus wept. Okay, so what stands out in that verse, the latter part? Churches of Christ. What is it? What does our sign down here say? Church of Christ. And so when Paul says all the churches of Christ salute you, he is talking about the churches in the eastern part of the empire, where he has worked, where he has labored, churches that he has founded, and so he's sending their regards. If you look back in chapter 15 of Romans and verse 19, where he says, by the power of signs and wonders, going down the second verse, so from Jerusalem all the way around to Illyricum, I have fully proclaimed the gospel of Christ. And so from that region that I have all worked in, all of those churches that I have association with, many of whom are with him now at this very moment when he's writing this letter, because they have all gathered together to do what? Did you love these pop quizzes? Where's Paul when he writes Romans? He's in Corinth. And what did Paul pick up in Corinth? Contributions to go to the churches of Judea for the needy saints. Who's there with him? All of these representatives, you can see that in the book of Acts, all these people from these other congregations who had collected money, they're all traveling with Paul, if they wanted him to, traveling with Paul to take this money. And so they're all there. And they're all send our greetings to the people in Rome. And passing on, that's in Acts 20, verses 3 and 4, by the way. So, interestingly enough, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but this is the only place in all of the New Testament where the phrase Church of Christ is found. And it's plural. So it's not talking about a singular church. In fact, if you want to know what descriptor is used the most in the New Testament, it's the Church of God. And that's found 11 times. So, the phrase Church of Christ is not the proper name, not the given official proper name of churches in the New Testament. If it was the official name, then what would that make us? A denomination. Denominate means to name. And I hear people who speak of the Church of Christ in a denominational way. They will say things like, I'm Church of Christ. Are you Church of Christ? I've been a Church of Christer all my life. I mean, I've even heard it stated that way. Don't do that. Don't use it that way. The word means we are a church that belongs to Christ. We're his church. We're also a church that 10 more times than the word Church of Christ is found, we're also a church that belongs to God. We're God's church. Okay? And listen, when I was in California, the last church I was with down there didn't have Church of Christ on the outside of their building. And there was such furor over that. There's a church in Florida. Is Christians meeting at
North Livingston.
Christians meeting at North Livingston. How well did that go over? Not well. You can go a third of a mile and find the Church of Christ in Livingston. Okay, and so I mean it's because they're just wanting to remove the idea from the world's point of view and maybe help with our point of view. We're not a denomination. I mean, we could be the church that meets in Bremerton. And when I was in California, because it was just called the Canyon Church, it was because the Cavalry, well, yes, the International Church of Christ was so prevalent, and their cultish ways and all the things that were bad about that. So if you go back further, it was called the Boston Movement. But the Calvary Chapel churches had a dozen radio stations in Southern California. They were constantly railing on the International Church of Christ, but International Church of Christ is so hard to say, so what did they shorten it to? Just the Church of Christ. And so when this new congregation started, they didn't want to be associated with the International Church of Christ, and so they just referred to themselves as the Canyon Church. Because it wasn't expedient anymore. And people today kind of try to get around that by, oftentimes you'll see a sign that says the Church of Christ meets here. They'll add meets here, so you'll know it's not the Church of Christ as a denomination. Yes?
I mean, don't we see this so many times also when Paul addresses Christians by the home that they gather in?
Yes. Yeah.
And is it no different than for us to say that we are Christians meeting
In Bremerton. Yeah.
as opposed to Phoebe's house?
Right.
Or,
Well, and the argument that had been made to me about that, I think the church in Longmont also had that situation. It was, well, how will visiting Christians find you? Where are you? I'm just wanting you to understand and appreciate the fact that this is not the name of the Lord's people. Yes, Nathan?
One of the things, when I was living in Seattle, I ran into the United Church of Christ
Yes.
a lot.
Yes.
And they have a very different philosophy
Yes.
than much of us. And
Right.
so it was interesting when you would talk about church and you would mention, oh, this is the church I go to, there was an association with the United Church of Christ
Right.
to people, which is very different. You know, they have female pastors and
Right.
they have explicit LGBTQ flags.
Right,
and things
right,
like that.
right,
It's a very different philosophy. So
right.
I was struggling with, well, how do I call myself in a way that people can recognize?
Right. Yeah, I struggled with that too. Well, I'm just a Christian. I attended the Bremerton Church, and go from that way. Anyway, I just want to make sure that we understood that you understand that we're not a denomination. And listen, there are plenty of people who go by Church of Christ who indeed are a denomination and relegate themselves among all of the other churches like that. But on a more general note, and what what Paul's main point here is when he says that all the churches of Christ salute you. Paul is basically saying, I have a relationship with all of these churches, all of these groups of the Lord's people. And they have a relationship with me. And they're supportive of my work that I've been doing. They're supportive of my work that I want to do in Spain. And I want you to help me too. Which I think is a large part of this whole first part of Romans 16, is Paul trying to lay a foundation that I'm worthy of your confidence and your support as I come to visit you and then move on to Spain to work in areas that I haven't been before, where the gospel hasn't been. Okay? Any other comments on that? All right, so question 5. What was Paul's advice concerning false teachers? And this is in verses 17 and 18. He says, I urge you, brothers and sisters, to watch out for those who cause divisions and put obstacles in your way that are contrary to the teaching you have learned. Keep away from them. For such people are not serving our Lord Jesus Christ, but their own appetites. By smooth talk and flattery, they deceive the minds of naive people. So again, just like this part of this entire end of chapter 16, there are people who believe that this section here was not a part of Paul's original letter. And they ask decent questions. Why would Paul say such harsh things to a church he didn't found and has never visited? And they are saying that what Paul says here in verses 17 and 18 wouldn't be appropriate. In fact, it's inappropriate for him to, after sending these greetings and all of that, to just plop this little section in here. So I'm going to give you in the context why I believe that it makes perfect sense, and then I'll let you out a couple of minutes early today so we can take verse 17 and the rest next week. In the context of what we've just read, it to me makes perfect sense. Again, he just sent greetings from churches that he's previously labored in or founded. He's going to follow this little section here in verses 21 down through verse 23 with more greetings from people who are with him right now and sending their greetings and have specified that they want to send their greetings, I suppose. He's also just talked about unity and harmony and a love that is a hallmark of God's people. He even went so far as to tell them how to greet each other in showing that harmony and fellowship. And does Paul know what false teachers can do to a congregation? Yeah. He's right now in a congregation. He's in Corinth when he writes this, and he has seen what has happened. When you read 1 Corinthians and you read 2 Corinthians, you can see the devastation that happened because of false teachers, these super apostles that he talks about, and the damage that they have done to the church there. And so being there and wanting to, because he's an apostle, and because he's wanting to make sure that they get the gospel and get all of it, including this very important warning, he adds this here in this section in between his greetings. I think Paul is always conscious about the dangers of false teachers in congregations and wants to warn them about that. So hopefully that'll kind of set your mind at ease if you had any doubts about that. And as we go through and look at what he's warning them about, and again add some more praise to them in verse 19, a blessing in verse 20, and then this amazing doxology that he gives to close the whole letter in verses 25 through 27. And I hope that we'll be able to finish that next week. Any questions? The other thing I would suggest that you do between now and the end of the month is read 1 Peter. Maybe several times, so that you can get the text and the story and the background in your minds. And I'll I'll be preparing the lesson sheets for that, for our study. Okay, everybody understand what we talked about today? All right, thank you very much. I never used